Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Integration Chronicles. TAP Integration is on a mission to simplify psychedelic integration by providing accessible and actionable tools for individuals of all stages of transformation. And we are here to empower facilitators and amplify their gifts. So I'm really excited to welcome Tiffany Mertens.
Yeah,
Mertens.
Mertens. Yeah, yeah.
Mertens to the show. She is a somatic therapist focused on pleasure and intimacy, something that I don't think that we talk about enough and is such a big part of the work that we do. I would put this into the heart category where we put all of the relationships, communication, love, intimacy, emotional processing, and releasing. So you'll have this episode come out during our Heart Month. So, with no further ado, Tiffany, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much. I love that you're creating space for this conversation to continue to reach more of that heart center. That feels nice.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. It's a topic that I want to learn more about. So, I'm really excited for this. It's something that it's really just barely scratched the surface on in terms of doing it in a conscious and healthy way.
Yeah.
So, looking back, what were the pivotal moments that led you to facilitation work? And what was your life like before you took that leap?
Yeah, I love this question. Yeah, thank you so much. Before the leap, I was thinking about this morning, looking over these questions. I was so afraid of life in general. Like as a kid, I was so afraid. Um, And growing up, I didn't feel like I had any safe space that was my own. And so it was interesting then to be out in the world and feel like, dang, I would have these moments where I would dance in front of my mirror, to like Missy Elliott or something. And I would look at myself. I would see this like little reflection of me. And I would see empowerment and I would see beauty and I would see magnetism and eroticism. But it was like the second I wasn't in that little bubble with myself, all that confidence would disappear. And there was a moment, I think, in my life where I was like, I don't want to live like this. Like, I don't want to wake up and be afraid to go out and be out in the world. I don't want to be afraid of my femininity. I don't want to be afraid of my beauty. I definitely don't want to be afraid of my pleasure. Like, nothing feels more wrong to me, I think, than that, like wrong in my body, not necessarily in value or morals, but just in my body that just feels wrong. And so, my desire for that to like feel something other than what I was feeling was a big motivator. Um, and also just my own journey of like exploring what my traumas were and how that was impacting ultimately my ability to feel safe. But at the time, it was disguised as like really bad relationships.
And so, what was the moment that led from that experience of life to your desire to facilitate and teach others what you'd found?
I noticed that for me, somatic movement, like one of the avenues of that is dance. And I think dance really fascinates me because we don't really understand why we move the way that we do. We just do. And there's like this energy or this current that can take over, does take over, right? Especially if we allow it or we play with it. And I knew before I even got into trainings around somatic therapy, I knew there was something to it, but I was like, oh, it's just like dance magic. Like I don't know how else to describe what's happening, like, but I'm changing in my body and my happiness is improving and my confidence is improving. So there's something to this. Um, and I was so hungry to find out. And so I think spirit naturally led me into trauma recovery through somatics. I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna heal people's trauma through dance. Like, of course, that is my destiny. It felt so clear and wanting to take people, men, women, all genders, on that same journey. That's like whatever is blocking you or you feel limited in that expression. If you want to, we get to unpack that and figure out why in order to recalibrate our sense of self to figure out where we land in the middle of all the noise so we could start acting true from that place. And that for me is where intimacy is actually built.
Beautiful. Wow. Can you share a transformative story from your journey? One that changed everything for you.
Yeah. The one that came through this morning was my first time taking MDMA, if I can talk about that, Can we talk about
Yeah,
that? Yeah.
absolutely.
I grew up in the, oh, I shouldn't say obviously, but I grew up in the dare era. And so I was very much as a kid, like no to drugs. My dad, like bless his heart, he had like a drug addiction for a while. And so I was like, no smoking, cigarettes, no weed, no alcohol. I was very much like, was going to be a good student. And then like disrupted that whole field. And I think it was when I was 25, I finally decided I'd heard enough about MDMA through rave culture that it really opens you up and that you feel so much acceptance and love with other people. And that was something I never had in my life, like truly had. And I was really longing for that experience. And so I decided it was like a Halloween rave in Portland, Oregon. I decided I would take some MDMA with my partner at the time. And it just cracked me open. It cracked me wide. It was like I could literally see all the armor from my childhood and my trauma just like fall off. It wasn't a slow dissolve. It was just like, boom, here's what love looks like. And it was such a healthy, generous portion that I was receiving from other people on medicines, not on medicines. But it's like that ability to feel so deeply connected because I felt safe and I could trust it what people were saying to me about I'm so beautiful. I love your booty shorts, like, just like the culture that comes from how lovey and beautiful MDMA can be, just like it spoke to my soul. And from that moment, it was so pivotal that I was like, I am never going to choose what doesn't light me up and feel good for me. It was like I couldn't go back past that door anymore of like sacrificing my pleasure or sacrificing my joy. And I've like never looked back since. And I love it. I'm fascinated by this side of the spectrum, like where everything is radiant and beautiful, and birds are talking to me, and the breeze is dancing with me. Like I'm obsessed with the way that life feels for me now.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's funny because my first like big experience with MDMA was on Halloween, also here in Austin, like 15 years ago, and just going in and just feeling so like everything is just so incredible and interesting, and you're just connecting with everybody. And yeah, that was a big moment. It's
Mm,
also just, yeah, it's the medicine that changed my life as well.
I love
It's
that.
a great one. Yeah. Um, so we often hear about aha moments. What was yours in terms of understanding the power of this type of work and maybe deciding to facilitate with it, integrate people through this process? Like I really see this as a big part of integration is, okay, now we've had this opening with medicine, or maybe not with medicine. Maybe you've had some type of a Kundalini awakening, or you did a really deep breath work and you felt this openness, this lightness. Well, how do we use and perpetuate that energy, that openness, to then integrate these new understandings of pleasure, intimacy, and connection with self? So I'm curious, like what was the transition from this big transformative rave experience to where you are right now and work in the work you do with people?
Mm. I feel so much more reverence now than I did. Um, and that feels so good to me. It feels really good to be in like reciprocal relationship. It feels really good to have a deeper understanding through what that journey catalyzed for me. That put me in a deep dive of like dark feminine art because I needed a space to express that, trauma recovery because I needed to heal that, psychedelic work because that creates a whole other healing environment. Like, so that moment really catalyzed like all of the education and study that I've done since. And I've seen and reaped the benefits in my own life. And I'm still learning. Like I'm such a work in progress. I'm not preaching, but it's like that I had that moment, right, where it was like, oh my God, all the armor came off and I was just liberated. But the next day didn't feel like that, And so rather than, I had the smarts enough to know, like, rather than chase that, because I think that's the only thing that can give it to me, what in my life is revealing why that feels difficult, why that's actually hard. Because I really want to be joy. I tasted it, I felt it. I felt so alive yesterday, right? And then the next day or a week later or a month later, I'm just like, man, how do I access that on my own. And some part of me knew that it was possible. I think what you're saying, like Kundalini, is like I had experiences like that. It was like I've gotten lit up off just music alone, you know. So I don't necessarily need psychedelics to do that. And I think for me, that's also why dance is such a part of that integration process, is because it clears space. It allows me to quite literally digest and process the material in the way that it wants to move through my body. And ultimately, by me choosing to do that work, like self-massage, self-touch, dancing, mindful breathing, checking in with myself, all these other somatic practices, gives me so much more space that I don't get in those triggered spaces. Right? It's like my nervous system became so resilient that rather than be in survival mode or vigilance, like softness and sweetness gets to be the baseline. And I want that for people. I want people to be able to have that experience for themselves because it's so good. It's so cozy. It feels amazing. Again, I'm like, why wouldn't you choose it? And noticing that it takes constant effort, you know, so how I show up for myself matters like more than anything else, because that's what I'm giving from or offering from. And so I think the more value people can really see in their own capacity or lack of capacity, the more authentic and intimate we could be with each other, because we know how to provide that and offer that. That's, I think, ultimately what creates safety and space for that community to start to emerge. I really went on a deep dive. Thanks for following me with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean what you described is a real pathway towards facilitation. It's first really understanding, embodying these modalities and understanding within ourselves so that we can model that for the people that we work with. And that's not to say that we have to be 100% expert or masters in these modalities to be able to help other people, but to have a good understanding of what it looks like to embody this knowing, this connection to our God-given right to experience pleasure and intimacy.
And
What
we
are
can
some,
feel it. And we can feel that in our bodies, you know, like when it finally comes online, it's such a reclamation.
yeah, what are some of the main preventions or the things that stop your client from being able to connect to their intimacy and pleasure? Like, what are some of the main roadblocks you see?
There's just anxiety around actual emotional depth, like to actually sit in the doors of emotional intimacy feels tough for a lot of the clients that I have. And sometimes it's past stories. A lot of times, I mean, at the core, there's a self-confidence piece. And so like in relationships, if I have clients who come in who are scared of being in a relationship or wonder why they continually pick people that hurt them, there's almost always a layer of self-betrayal in there, you know? So it's like, oof, we got to see where we're not standing for our needs and our desires as well. And that's a lot of deep shadow work. If we want to go there, it's like, oof, okay, why don't I choose myself? Those are harsh realities, those moments. And they could feel a bit like dark nights of the soul. And I find that they're so necessary in order to recalibrate again, like what safety feels like in the body. So I could say a roof over my head, I could say all these, you know, logical things, but it's also a felt sense. And so if people feel numb or disconnected, if they have no conversation with their body, because the mind is just always operating the show, that can feel like a block for a lot of people. However, what I find is it's just kind of this like, if you think about somebody who's turned their back, right? The body kind of turns its back and it just becomes this workhorse and it just kind of does what you tell it to do until it can't do that anymore. But the second it starts to notice, like, hey, we're tuning in here and like, oh, hey, not only that, but like Tiffany is listening and she's taking action. My whole system starts to soften there because it's like, okay, not only is she listening, but she's acting on it. We can start to trust her. And so that is that safety net that I feel like starts to get built in that space. But people will come in with numbness, disconnection. They feel creatively blocked. The word sexuality creates an experience, a felt experience in the body of confusion or anxiety or stress. So it's usually things like that that people come in with.
Yeah. I imagine a lot of shame underlying some of those things. Um, who was I? I think it was Martha Beck, The Way of Integrity, which when you said self-betrayal, it reminded me of that book for anyone who hasn't read it. It's just so incredible. But she talks about how she does group work and she'll get somebody to talk about something that they hold shame around, something that they did that might be really, terrible feeling to them. And she'll say, who here in the room feels compassion for what they just shared? And she'll get some volunteers raising their hands, and then she'll tell that person who just shared to go and look into the eyes of each of those people and just
Wow.
receive their compassion for what they're feeling to really heal that shame. And I think you just being in that space of holding space for their anxiety, their insecurities, the things that are blocking them and keeping them from being really free and connected, and relaxing the nervous system through that process is so key. I'm curious, what other integration tips would you have for people listening? Maybe someone who's like just wanting to like take some steps in that direction of being able to connect to more pleasure and intimacy. Do you have a tool that you use for the people that you work with that you could share with us?
This is just like a really basic nervous system check-in tool. And my partner and I actually developed it originally for us, but then we use it for couples because it was like, wow, this is really helping our relationship. And it's built off of the traffic light system, which they talk about in polyvagal theory. And so it's like when you think of a traffic light, green is like, I'm good to go. You can do thumbs up also. Like, I'm good to go. I feel open, curious. I feel safe. These are all typically indicators of like of a safe nervous system, our curiosity and our ability to kind of like poke out. So am I feeling green? How am I feeling? In my mind, do I feel pretty like inspired? In my body, I feel really good, excited. My spirit is high. Okay, I'm probably a green. If I'm a yellow, we think about yellow as like caution, right? You could either punch the gas and hope you make it through. You could slow down because you don't know what's coming, right? The nervous system is the exact same way. And so noticing like, oh, I actually feel a bit on edge, or my moon's coming any day. Like I'm feeling like heavy and irritated. I'm in the yellow, I'm in like a cautionary zone. Or red is like, I need help. I've crossed the line, right? Like I have to stop. Um, and so checking in with like where you're at is just like such a great entry point to being like, where am I at? And then choosing how to operate from that place. So it's like, what is based upon that? What is this moment asking of me? And how do I want to move in that space? And just really taking autonomy of what that gets to look like. Even in an environment where, let's say you're not an entrepreneur, you have the power to pivot in that moment and do what you can in that moment. So I say that. The second thing, just to throw a second one out there, is really getting comfortable and learning like how to touch yourself, like how your body likes. Does it like light touch? Sometimes you want some like grounded pressure. Really coming into like receivership of your own touch, I feel like is one of the most liberatory, pleasure-based experiences because it builds a bond and connection that just cannot be replicated. So there's something really beautiful about when we're able to truly receive our own touch and let it bring us pleasure, let it bring up tears, let it bring up anger, whatever the emotional experience is. We will only offer that if we truly feel like we're in a safe enough space to do that. What better place to practice that than in our own bodies through
Yeah.
touching? That's like, hey, I've got you. Hey, I'm here. I love you. You had a hard day. Oof, that emotion is like really tough. Yeah, I feel let's just move that. Like, let's move that somewhere else. Um, I feel like that is the greatest gift that we can give ourselves in a world that is like wildly stressed out and dense and trying to figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really helpful one, and one that I can imagine most people don't do very often. I'm curious about the through line between the red, yellow, green check-in. When do you do that? Like, when are best times to do that? And how does that connect to feeling more pleasure and intimacy?
Yeah, great question. So you can do that anytime. When I first started coming into more body awareness and wanting to build that connection, because I was very numb and disconnected. So my mission was like, I just would love to feel something. In best case scenario, it'll be an orgasm one day. Like that was like, you have to try not to put pressure on that, but coming from trauma, I was like, that's what, I was missing that. And so I would set alarms on like on my phone 3 times a day at random times. When it would go off, I would just check in. Hey girl, you feeling green? You feeling yellow? You feeling red? Okay, what would bring healing to this moment? Right. And I'm like, oh, going outside for a walk. Oh, going and taking a break. And I would just immediately give it to myself. My boss knew, hey, when my alarm goes off, give me 60 seconds. It's for my sanity and for the benefit of you and all people at this establishment as well. Like, let me check in with myself so I can serve better. I mean, that's really what it's about. So any time of day, the alarms can be really helpful for just like taking that pause from the mind and checking in. The other part is, again, like the more the body hears you listening, the easier it's going to be for us as individuals to pick up on its signals. And for women, it's especially important with our intuition because it's always sending signals, red flags, green flags, yellow flags to us as well, right? But the more we start to listen to it, the more we become in right relationship with its needs and desires, which innately make pleasure more accessible because we can't really feel pleasure if we don't feel safe.
Yeah.
And so the safer and safer we become in our everyday waking state, the more access to pleasure we have. And that's not even necessarily sexual. That's also joy. It's like my happiness, like, oh, okay, there it is. I made it. Like, thank God, my happiness. I'm just such an advocate for that, not bypassing, but just like, yeah, if we can choose it, even in the thick of it, like, let's choose the best case scenario in the thick of it. That sounds like a great plan,
That's amazing. Yep, I really like that. Okay, so it's a way just to kind of bring you back into connection with self, with safety and nervous system regulation, which ultimately opens you up and allows you to receive from others.
Yeah. Deep intimacy with ourselves first so that we can then offer that to others because that's a whole other parameter,
Yeah.
So there's a whole other chapter that starts the second somebody else comes into that space. But at least you set yourself up for more success.
Right. An ability to be present with the other person as
Yeah.
well, which can allow for that connection. In what ways has your approach to guiding others shifted since you began integrating your own experiences? And how do you hold space for transformation now?
That's a good question. It's interesting coming from, I'm like a manifesting generator. So coming from this area where I have my hand in a lot of pots and structure is necessary. I noticed that the way that I used to work was very structured and it was kind of caught in this like masculine bubble of A plus B equals C. And that didn't really feel right for my body. And I think for my clients. And so now everything is actually like softened around the edges, quite literally. And it's more of this like flowing, living embodied experience. So when clients come into my space, we're immediately checking in. Where are you at? Where are you at? I tell them where I'm at. So they have an honest perspective of like, hey, I love that you're in a green. I'm at a yellow. So if you think that I'm like feeling a bit off, it's not you. It's that I had a hard class earlier and I was like crying for an hour. Like I bring my authenticity to the table too. It's like we might move and I might cry today, but I'm still holding the container and I'm still in that space. And I think that has deepened my ability to do that with my clients and attract those type of people that are like, that's the type of authenticity that I want. Has really allowed for this to take shape in the way that it does, where I'm teaching the frameworks and the concepts and all the different ways that they can relate to it as they're living and breathing into whatever that experience is for them and however they're moving through that energy. And for me, it's almost like the teaching is such a small fraction. That's like my gift, that I'm offering to people. But the actual bread and butter of that whole experience is like what you're experiencing while you're doing it and how it's feeling through you and what that activates for you. I mean, that's honestly why I keep doing it. Because it's like, whoo, you never know what expression is going to come out and how it's going to make you feel. But damn, it makes you feel empowered every time.
I love that so much. And maybe you already said this, but what is your favorite integration tool of all time? And by integration tool, I mean the tools that you work with to help people integrate pleasure, intimacy,
Oh, yeah.
somatic experiences.
Archetypes. I love archetypes. I love depth psychology. I love anything that tries to quantify the wild expanse that is our psyche. Like, any type of symbol, I feel like that can be pulled in an effort to try it on. Like, I have a performer background. I did cabaret, I produced cabaret shows. So there's an element of that with like, I'm going to try on the costume of the soft femme. I'm just going to try it on. I might not like it. I might like it. I might love it. Right. And it gives that opportunity for me to express whatever feels alive in the moment. Or if I want to tap into spiritual baddie energy because I need to set some boundaries. So I need to feel bad for a second. Like I am self-affirmed so that I can go into the world and I can like bring that to life in my own lived experience. And so I feel like archetypes give us that where we try on the costume of these different energies or personalities just to see how they fit, just to see how they feel, and then continue to kind of play with the wisdom about ourselves and how we relate to the deeper themes of those archetypes, like sexuality. Did that feel good? Why? Did that not feel good? Why? What would you love? What would make it feel better? Okay, so you kind of get to experience the full spectrum of who you are in a very contained way. And again, it's dance and music. So
And
yeah.
just for the audience that might not be super familiar with archetypes, could you give us like three other ones, three more archetypes, common ones that you see or that people maybe desire to step into?
Yeah, so like archetypes are basically patterns that are like within our psyche. There's masculine archetypes, there's feminine archetypes, there's, I would say there's non-binary archetypes as well, that create opportunities for expression. And so like classic old school archetypes where like the mother is an archetype. She just like had this massive birth. She also just went through a massive rebirth. They used to say the crone, but I joke because I'm like, nobody's saying like, oh, I'm in my crone era, they're like, I'm in my grandma era, so we have crone. The maiden was like the young, naive archetype. I call her the flirtatious femme archetype, the divine queen. Men have archetypes also, like the magician, they have the warrior. And we all have counter archetypes to each other as well. And they each have their own light and dark energies. So there's a lot, even in one archetype, you could explore a lot of parts of yourself and value systems and beliefs in one 30-minute session with this particular style of personality or behavior, if we want to call it that.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, and I really love the idea that those are accessible to us. We just recently had the ACT conference for facilitators by facilitators in Austin, and Mike Zeller presented on the alter ego. And he had a couple that he went through, one which was weak ass Willie when he had just lost all their like his and his family's money and was just feeling so deflated. He's like this executive coach and used to being like really charismatic, and he just stepped into this like weak ass Willie alter ego and like had his tail tucked between his legs, so to speak, and had to really connect with that archetype within him, and then decided to create a new one that embodied more of what he wanted to represent, and so he called him Magic Mike, and he just played with stepping in between those two different energies. And it really is, it's a role that we can step into. It's a interchangeable identity, which I really love the idea of, because I think oftentimes we get too fixed into an identity that it just becomes us. And we don't realize that those can move through us when the time is right, and they allow for more flexibility in what is needed in that moment or that environment.
Yeah. And part of what I think is so powerful about having the performance background is it's one thing for me to be, let's say I'm in my dark feminine and I'm doing a performance with fire dancing, right? So I'm embodying this energy and I'm exuding it in whatever way that I want to give it. Or if I'm like really channeling, whatever way it's flowing through me, the audience is having their own experience of that as well. So I feel like archetypes, when we start to explore them, they're such inner conversation starters as much as then when we start to put them on display from a place of empowerment and artistic expression, that also ripples out. And so people, if they start to go like, oof, that girl is scary, it's like, oh, what's that about? Like, what's your relationship to fire? What is your relationship to the way she's putting her sexuality on display? What about it makes you uncomfortable? So even if people aren't actively talking about it afterwards, they're thinking about it. And for me, that's what creating impact is it is sometimes those subtle shifts that make somebody start to question why they relate the way that they do, which can also block intimacy, to kind of like bring that full circle.
Yes, absolutely. I had a friend the other day, she highlighted what impact really means. If something gets impacted, like if a car gets impacted, it breaks. Or it gets impacted with that, it can't stay the same, right? The nature of it changes, and usually it's through a break. So, in order to have an impact on somebody or something or some type of situation, it kind of has to break in order to change.
Yeah. I used to
So,
say this joke I was like, my goal as a facilitator is I want to be like that rock chip that just cracked your windshield. And you get to decide how you all want to approach that from there. It's like, are you the type that will just let it keep cracking? Are you going to get it replaced? I just kind of want to be that thing that just like chips in a little bit, that creates a shift and makes you pause.
mhm,
I also just think
mhm.
that space is pretty erotic, if I'm totally honest, It's like that moment where your actions are expanding and shifting somebody's reality is such a sweet spot to play in, I think.
Absolutely. I love that. So far we have just taking the time to kind of touch yourself a little bit more, maybe touch parts of your body that you don't usually touch or
Mhm.
that you don't let others touch. I know for women, it's usually at the stomach area, if they're self-conscious about that, but finding those parts of your body that you don't touch very much. We have red light, yellow light, green light for a check-in with yourself. And Tiffany really highlighted how we have the power to shift between those at will with some tools. And then the archetypes. And I really encourage you to dive in for men, king, warrior, magician, lover is one of the best for masculine archetypes. For women, it's like women who run with wolves.
Yeah.
There's also the Queen's Code, or what was, I think maybe, I believe that's one as well. But I'm curious, Tiffany, what other do you have any like one or two resources that you could give to people? What are some of your favorite books about pleasure and intimacy that have really been a game changer for you?
I loved Come As You Are. That was kind of like my first book into really exploring my own anatomy and just the concept of pleasure. That helped really reframe how intimacy could look, because that was not my reality. So that book really changed the game for me. Outside of pleasure and intimacy, I read this book by Valerie Kouar. I might be saying her last name wrong. It's called See No Stranger. And I loved it because it reminded me of the humanity of people and what can happen when we stop seeing other people as a threat to our safety and the work that comes with that. And she did journalism and stuff. So she, touches on racism, it touches on just humanity at large, it touches on her field of work. But that also just like really made me pause and consider like, wow, again, it's like, how do I want to feel when I'm out in the world? And what do I need to do within myself to make that right? And so I feel like those two books really changed the game for me a lot. Um, yeah.
Those sound great. I haven't read either of them and I would love to dive into them. Thank you for that. So, last but not least, do you have a special offer that you can give our TAP members if anybody feels called to work with you or dive deeper into your knowledge? And what can they expect to gain from working with you?
I love it. It's a whole new language, like a whole new language of the body, of how you relate to pleasure, how you relate to yourself, and how you relate to your femininity. Full spectrum, like good, bad, dirty, ugly, wild, hot, sexy, like all of it, right? And like really love and appreciate yourself at your core. And I find that life starts to really open up for all of my clients. It's like they're attracting partners, their sexy energy is coming back online. They feel more beautiful, they're getting more job opportunities. And that's what happens as women when we are tapped into that frequency within ourselves. And we deserve that, like bare minimum, we deserve that. And so that's what you'll get. You'll walk away with like that sense of empowerment and radiance and just like lust for life. And I don't mean lust as in like punch drunk. It's like, I can't help but be devoted to you because you're so beautiful and what you offer me in return is so beautiful. Challenges included. And so, yeah, I would love to, like what I'm doing this year, it's called the Body Temple. It's all about coming back to reverence for this body that is our temple. And it houses a ton of information. And with that information is power, right? That's key to like getting the things we want, and not from a place of manipulation, but from a place of like authentic attraction. So it starts at 9 weeks with the vision of doing deeper dives, but 9 weeks is kind of the sampler, if we want to call it that, the little teaser. Get a taste of it, see if you like it, try it on. And then continue to work one-on-one from that. And I would love to, I'd love to offer your listeners like 50% off of that. It's a rolling enrollment. So provided I have space in my calendar, like we can plug you in, we can do it online. If you're here in Mexico City, we can meet in person. I have a beautiful terrace. Like come play, come roll around, come experience like what pleasure can feel like. I want that. I want that for everybody.
Beautiful. We will provide a link to that discount code and more information from Tiffany on our newsletter and in the show notes for the YouTube video. Also super excited to be bringing the facilitator meetups we've been doing to Mexico City and collaborating with Tiffany and Jasdeep and some of the other facilitators. So if you are in Mexico City or if you know anybody there, anyone who's facilitating any type of transformation through sex and intimacy, through breath, movement, sound, psychedelics, and are looking to connect with other facilitators in the industry to just support each other, to collaborate, please reach out. We would love to have you there.
Yeah, come
Tiffany,
hang out.
this has been awesome. Thank you so much. Great tools for the audience, and I just wish you the best and really helping clients to open up. It's such important work.
Yeah, thank you so much. Reflecting these questions has been it's been so fun. It's been so beautiful. It's great to have this conversation with you and have this back and forth. So I really appreciate your shares also.
Absolutely. Well, we'll be in touch. Bye, everyone. Have a
Bye.
great week.